Good morning and welcome to the SEC Daily at Southeastern 14, where we talk SEC football from 11 to noon every day. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Blake Lovell and Gavin Schoenwald. Gentlemen, big show ahead today. We will talk about Arkansas and LSU some. We'll give our previews for UTSA's road trip to Tennessee, as well as Memphis's game with Missouri in St. Louis. Charlotte and Florida is another one we'll talk about. We've not previewed those yet, and we'll take questions and comments about whatever you'd like to talk about in the chat. So please do that. We do like listener feedback and questions and all those good things. But gentlemen, big day ahead, big week ahead. Gavin, I know you're looking forward to this. You were watching plenty of football last weekend, but it's about to get really real in terms of some of the games ahead as the slate is going to get tougher here for pretty much everybody in the SEC.
Yeah, no doubt, Chris. And, as a player, you view the season as, I don't want to say halves because they're not even, but it's definitely a new start. Conference play is a new start to the season. These non-conference games, a lot of the SEC teams play at the beginning of the year. I don't want to call them warm-ups, as we've seen. They're not guaranteed wins for a lot of teams in this conference, but I'd be lying to you if I said that the opponents aren't a little tougher when you're playing interconference. We all know that. This is the SEC, the best conference in America. But I feel like also, too, we need to start playing like it as well. We got, some of our alpha teams who have, a loss, Alabama with a loss, non-conference loss, Texas A&M with a non-conference loss, and LSU as well. And so, this is going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a wild ride these next couple of weeks for this interconference play. And, it's going to, like I said this in a couple shows ago, it's going to be an absolute war. There's no margin for error. There used to be years past where, you could drop a conference game either in September, maybe even early October, and still find yourself where you want to be at the end of the year. Now, I think the margins are so small. They're so small in every single game. Win and loss is just going to mean a little bit more. And so I can't wait to get fired up. We got, Alabama, Ole Miss, big one, LSU, Arkansas, which we'll hit today, but also some other games that teams have at home that are not conference games. We're going to talk about Tennessee, going to talk about Florida as well. That could pop up some things that are worthy of discussion. So we'll see about what happens this weekend. But man, yeah, I'm fired up. I'm gonna be on that couch starting at 11 a.m. no doubt.
Yeah, and I've got another topic I want to bring up that there was something I didn't touch on just there. But Blake, what are the big things you're looking for this weekend, or maybe things that you've got your eye on with SEC football right now?
I mean, I guess I could repeat what I said yesterday. I think for me, teams like Auburn and Kentucky are one of the top storylines because I haven't really seen them play great competition yet. And so I think we learn a lot more about those two teams, obviously playing different level of teams. I think A&M significantly better than Vanderbilt. But I think we still learn something about Kentucky depending on how they play. I mean, they're 2 touchdown favorites at this point against Vanderbilt on the road. We saw how that's gone. I feel like Vanderbilt's always played Kentucky close when Stoops has been there, especially when Kentucky has been a favorite. That was a stat I saw yesterday. Something like Stoops was 0-4 against the spread or something when they're a maybe 14-point favorite against Vanderbilt or more. And so Vanderbilt's kind of usually kept it pretty close. And so I think that's, like we say, I can say A&M's, better than Vanderbilt right now by how many points, but at the same time, Vanderbilt's played Kentucky pretty well. So I think I'm curious to see how that game unfolds. But yeah, I mean, outside of the obvious ones, I mean, can Lane Kiffin beat Nick Saban? Best chance to do it. All that. I mean, that's the obvious one. We talked about that the past couple of days. Can Missouri keep the momentum rolling? But to me, my biggest one is Auburn and Kentucky. I just want to, maybe they both go on the road and get wins. But I just want to see how they play against teams that I think are better than what they've seen thus far.
Yeah, Blake, you brought up the state of Alabama quarterbacks. I was going to go in a little different direction for a minute. I think that you've had some folks in the mainstream media. I think Paul Feinbaum allegedly did this yesterday. I didn't see it, but a couple of people have called out Alabama's team for quitting on Nick Saban last week, and I think that quarterback room was a mess. Sounds to me like Jalen Milroe is the guy that the locker room has bought into. He didn't play last week. I don't know how much that explains what you saw, but Alabama's a very interesting situation. Just hearing the turmoil in Tuscaloosa is hurting Oreo's ears at the moment. So rather than make everybody listen to that, Gavin, I want to talk to you. What happens when you've got a split locker room and mediocre quarterback play?
Man, sorry, that was hilarious. But
it happened. It's a daily occurrence here.
Okay, but no, I think. Look, the truth is the quarterback position is the leadership of the team. You know, the team takes on the personality of the coach. I get that. But the quarterback position is the leadership of the team because you're only with the coach for X amount of hours. You're with your quarterback and your guys in your locker room hours and hours and hours on end. And so, you know, I think when you have a little bit of a decisiveness at quarterback, especially in this situation, you look last week at, you know, what happened in South Florida. I've never seen a giant program like Alabama go through that, you know, 3 weeks into the season. It was just a little confusing to me, to be honest with you. And I don't know if Tommy Rees, you know, convinced him to play his boy from Notre Dame or really what happened, to be honest with you. But Jalen Milroe gives them the best chance to win. He does. And, you know, you got to play him a little bit differently. You got to give him some more opportunities. But, you know, a quarterback battle still being talked about week 4 into a season at a program like Alabama, a program like LSU, Ohio State, these elite programs of college football. I mean, yeah, absolutely that can tear apart a locker room. Absolutely it can. I'm just interested to see what this looks like going forward. It sounds like from all the press conferences that Milroe is the guy. What happens if he goes out this week and really struggles? Do they turn around again? If they do so, then we really got something to talk about next week. We really got something to talk about.
And I think this plays into a bigger conversation, and it's something you and I have talked about going into. I don't know if today's the place for all of it. But, okay, can we all agree nobody has locked down a program and had it more disciplined than Nick Saban, right? I mean, can you name a guy that has done a better job of that? I can't. It has been remarkable. But as we have said many times, things have changed around college football. And you looked at Alabama last year, and you started to see some cracks. I think Bama was the most penalized team in the league a year ago. You hear things, and Gavin is a guy who was playing in the SEC a year ago. I'm particularly interested in your opinion on this. It may have been different for you at Vandy than it would be at Alabama, but you have these kids who are high 4-star, 5-star recruits. Look, every kid gets to campus and thinks they're invisible, and I think that's more the case when you're a highly regarded player. Again, Nick Saban's whole thing has been on discipline and team building, and you wait your turn. Look, they had trouble finding a quarterback in the first place because they were in on some kids, but those players looked at them and said, hey, wait a minute. Heisman winner here, Heisman winner there. I'm out on that. I want to go somewhere where I can play, which is a factor now, which is a little bit how Alabama ended up here. But you hear these things constantly about coaches cannot discipline players or bench them or whatever because they'll just go hit the portal.
Yeah.
You got kids, you got tampering, you got all kinds of stuff. You played before NIL and before the portal really became what it became. I'm just interested, maybe from your own experience, maybe from when you talk to other players, how much impact is this having on Nick Saban's ability to keep a dynasty intact? And how much does this affect every team and even maybe ways we're not thinking about? Because, again, you have lived it, Gavin.
Yeah, so when I signed in 2018, which sounds like forever ago, the rules were very different. If you decided to transfer, excuse me, if you decided to transfer, you were going to sit out a year. You weren't allowed to transfer interconference. The rules were very different. Now it's the wild, wild west of college football. And so because the rules are different, the formula to win has to change. And you've seen all these programs who have had this unbelievable formula and kind of found this magic that works for them. Alabama, Clemson. Now we're 2 years, 3 years into the transfer portal, this new era of NIL, which gives the players who are 18 to 22-year-old kids way, way more power than they've ever had before. And so now you're seeing these programs, like I said, Alabama, Clemson, who had that kind of magic for a while, and they're taking a step back a little bit. I don't want to say it's even in the playing field because otherwise, we would have a toss up of who's going to win the national championship every year. But it's changing. It's a changing of the guard because the formula is different. And so teams have to adjust. You either adjust or you don't. And if you don't, I think you get left behind a little bit. And I think everyone's still trying to learn as well, like what's the best way, trying to find, what works for them in their program. But it's absolutely different, man. And Chris, going back to what you said, if you're a big time recruit, a 4 or 5 star recruit, and you arrive on campus, in the old days it used to be as soon as you sign your name, I mean, you're there for at least 2 years because otherwise you got to sit out. And so as soon as you show up on campus, you go from being the hot shot, the top guy at your high school to, you're wearing a number in the 40s and coach doesn't care about you and you're sitting on the bench. Okay, now the kids have so much more power now. He can leave and go play at another school and make X amount of dollars. And that just was not the case for my first 2-3 years in school. I was trying to adjust to the new rules as well my last 2 years of Vandy. So the rules are different. The players have way more power than they used to be instead of kind of being these little toy soldiers that the coaches would move around. And so the formula to win is a lot different. You either change or get left behind.
So do we just establish that wearing a number in the 40s is sort of uniform number purgatory? I hadn't heard that one before.
It depends on position. I promise you, if I'm a 4 or 5 star recruit as a receiver, DB, one of those flashy positions, and I show up and my locker says number 40, I promise you that kid's not happy. I can promise you that.
Well, I mean, and I'm not asking you to out people or give specifics, but I mean, kids you were playing with a year ago were getting messages from other staffs and stuff like that mid-season of come transfer. How big a distraction can that get?
Yeah, man, it's very real. I think we're all, you can see in the offseason. I think it kind of flares up at the end of the year, December, January, February as well, because that's when people are trying to retool their rosters across college football. But yeah, I've seen, people joke about it. Oh, that's tampering. No, that's like very real. Like, I mean, there will be staffs who, people from other college football staffs employed at other universities and programs that will reach out and direct message players at other teams, which is obviously completely illegal. But now, as we've seen, the NCAA, because the rules are the wild, wild west and, not exactly sure what it is, teams are way more likely to take chances like that. And I guess they see the pros can outweigh the cons in terms of, snagging a great player from an interconference team versus, getting a slap on the wrist from the NCAA or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, teams are getting more bold. Teams are getting a little more out in the open and just not really trying to hide it, to be honest with you. But, that's just the nature of the game now. Like I said, the rules are different, and the guys are playing the game differently as well.
Blake, where do you stand on the whole Nick Saban dynasty is crumbling thing? Is it something he can get back? Obviously, Alabama's got issues this year, but I'm just very curious. Opinions are all over the board on whether Nick Saban can keep this together, have another rise to prominence, compete for playoff spots and all that. Or do you have a definite take on that? Or are you just kind of like me, where you're just kind of sitting here and watching and amazed at how quickly it has changed and not really knowing what to think next?
I mean, can I let you know after Saturday?
Might be the right answer.
Yeah, because I think this is to me, and I've seen a lot of people like this is the turning point game, right? This can be the turning point game for both programs. If Ole Miss beats Alabama, Ole Miss is proven, as long as Lane Kiffin's there, they're about to be, they're not going to lose the big games. Like, they're going to start winning these games regularly. Which, one game doesn't necessarily decide that, but that's the hype, right? Is if they can just get over this Alabama, hump here and just finally do this, like, that'd be great, right? And on the flip side, if Alabama loses, well, then yes, like that becomes one of those things where these talks are only going to escalate. I mean, it is Thursday. We have spent pretty much the entire week on this show. Specifically, Nick Saban has been a topic for at least 15 minutes every single day on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. It's the way this thing sets up and the way this has been going. And we were joking and laughing last week about, boy, it's going to be fun when future Alabama head coach Deion Sanders is there and, having fun with all those kind of things. Like, but Is the dynasty over? I mean, he's 71.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, when's he going to retire? Right? Is he going to coach till he's 80? I don't think so. So, I mean, if you're saying is the dynasty over, I mean, it's like if you just put it in that context. I mean, are they going to win the national championship this year? Is anyone betting on that right now?
No.
I think it's going to be hard. And so there's another year, right? So then go to next year. And so I know we have to make some of these kind of like just blanket statements. It's hard to say, but I don't know. I just, I mean, it's not what it was, 3-4 years ago. I mean, that can't be denied. So,
yeah. All right, gentlemen. Blake, anything in the comments we want to address or questions? I know we got 4 games we want to talk about here, but want to make sure we're paying attention to our audience to anything of interest to chat about here.
Well, Daniel earlier asked about prediction from Missouri and Memphis. We'll get to that in a minute, Daniel, on that. But yeah, we're gonna get into some thoughts on Arkansas LSU. I think we'll do that, Chris, after we do the next. Let's just run through these 3 games elsewhere first, and I think that's the way to do it. So,
okay, where would you like to start us, Blake?
Well, first of all, let me just pull up Blaine's comment here. Who's going to retire first, Nick Saban or Vince McMahon? That's easily going to be Nick Saban because Vince McMahon is never going to retire. For all of you professional wrestling fans out there, he's going to be 150. He's going to be cloned probably. All right, Tennessee UTSA. I think that's a interesting starting point because when I look at this game, obviously want to see how Tennessee responds, right? Now, I looked yesterday, Chris, and I don't know what Frank Harris's injury status is. I haven't seen any update on it. He obviously didn't play last week. And so was it turf toe injury?
It's turf toe.
Yep.
Turf toe.
And that would be big. He's a 7th-year player who has thrown for over 10,000 yards, and he is the backbone of that team. And without him, they lost to Army last week.
Yeah. So I don't think that's ideal. And I know Army's not, they run a different system, but I think the problem I have with UTSA keeping up here is, for starters, if Frank Harris doesn't play, I think Tennessee's defensive front will be out with a vengeance in this game with something to prove. And so I don't think that will help it for Eddie Lee Marburger, the backup. I don't think that's going to be a good setup to have Tennessee's front angry. But the thing is, too, it's like if Army did what they did against UTSA, different scheme. I mean, Tennessee, I continue to say Tennessee's strength is their running game. You've got the 2 guys that can go over 100 and whatever yards at any time in Wright and Small. We've seen Sampson play a role too. But yeah, this is one of those games where I think it just something else, Chris. I'm gonna bring this up real quick because I think this is a very important stat. I don't know if you know it necessarily, but if you look at Tennessee, I did the numbers on this yesterday. Tennessee, what they've done after they've lost a game under Josh Heupel. If my computer would ever load, I could tell you exactly what the stat is. So we're going to just continue to stall here on this. But
while yours is, I'll give you some numbers that I've got in front of me. And the spread may be dated by a couple of days now. I don't know how much that has or hasn't changed. It seems to have built in a potential Harris absence. Vegas had it at 20 with the 56.5 point over under. That makes for a predicted final of 38-18. Tennessee's favor. FP Plus has Tennessee by 17. FPI has Tennessee by 17. SP Plus has Tennessee by 21, and Sagarin has Tennessee by 15. Blake, if you found your stuff, go right ahead.
I found my stuff. It is so Tennessee's lost 8 games again heading into this season. So in Heupel's first 2 seasons, right? It was one of them was a bowl loss to Purdue, so we're not going to count that. But here's what they did after each of those losses. And remember, opponent's important here too. But this isn't knocking UTSA, but you'll see kind of the opponent list has not been the best. But after each loss, they beat Tennessee Tech 56-0. They beat Missouri 62-24. They lost Alabama 52-24. That's the only loss. in that group after coming off a loss. I think they lost 2 straight. Ole Miss, Alabama, I think it was. 60-14 against South Alabama, 66-24 win against Missouri, 56-0 win against Vanderbilt last year coming off that loss to South Carolina. So 5-1 record in those 6 games, averaging 54 points per game. So his teams have bounced back really well. Now, again, it's not like they're turning around and playing Alabama or Georgia or someone like that. But I think at least he has proven that when they bounce back pretty big and they put up a lot of points. Now, can they do that here? I think there's certainly the potential if Harris doesn't play. So,
Gavin, I hate to bring up bad memories, but you do have insight here.
Mhm.
You guys got them after
Gavin.
one of those games
all
a
right.
year
Yeah, we did.
ago. Was that one of those where you're warming up on the field and you can just tell they came to play that day?
Well, I think that like in any game, especially for when you lose a game like that, where early in the year, where I know obviously Tennessee had huge aspirations, especially after what happened last year. I mean, like I keep saying, it was a magical year for Tennessee. I think a lot of Vol fans hope that's the standard moving forward. But yeah, anytime you lose a game early in the year when you're, a rivalry game, when your season high expectations are through the roof, you got to get back on track. And, I think last year as well, when they lost that South Carolina game, they were just looking to get back on track. And, I think that's the key for Tennessee this weekend. UTSA comes to town. Look, they're 1-2. They're also back-to-back Conference USA champions. So, like, this isn't some, rollover game. You actually really got to prepare and understand what's going on this week. Otherwise, they might get you, especially if Frank Harris plays. I don't think he will. Yeah. I've seen the I believe I saw the lines moved about 3 points, which in favor of Tennessee, which tells me that they know something we don't. But they got to get back on track. What I want to see is kind of what Blake said. I want to see the defensive line dominate. They got a little revenge game, and they need it. I want to see the offense in sync. I need to see Milton connecting better with his receivers, connecting better with Heupel. It's kind of the same thing I brought up yesterday with, when you have a really, really good offensive head coach who is Josh Heupel. I brought this up yesterday with Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral and now Jackson Dart. When those guys are on the same page, the head coach, the offensive coach with the quarterback, it just flows and you can feel it as a player. And they need to get that. They need to get that back in sync. And I think this is a great opportunity. You got a home game against UTSA awaiting. The big one after the next week is a 6:00 kick against South Carolina, which is going to be
revenge game.
And they need this one. They need to get back in sync before they're ready for that big game against South Carolina that they know they all want to just beat the brakes off of Beamer and the Gamecocks. Yeah. So just got to get back on track. But yeah, to answer your question, long-winded, but this is a perfect game to get back in sync. They're out of sync. That Florida game, they were just out of whack, and they need to get back and hitting on all cylinders.
I think I'd be more worried for Tennessee if they won last week by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But I think that if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what I'd be worried about the look ahead to South Carolina because of what happened last year. But the fact is, because of how that game played out last week, I think it all sets up really well in Tennessee's favor to come out and really try to prove a point here. We'll see.
Gavin, turf toe, I believe, is the injury to Frank Harris. Was that ever one that you had?
Yeah. So the thing about turf toe is you get it at least once in your career. Everyone does. You're stuffing your foot in a cleat for every day for 7 months. It's just going to happen. Probably more than 7 months, to be honest with you. Basically, what happens is the ligament that connects not to get all doctor on you guys, sorry, but the ligament that connects your toe to the rest of your foot from just flexing it over and over again, it just gets inflamed and it hurts you. The only thing is there's so many stages of it. If you can have like a grade 2 and it bother you for 2 days and then you never feel it again. I've seen guys have like grade 5s and they can't walk on it to class. And it's completely different stages of it. I assume if it's holding this, this quarterback out of these games that it's pretty significant, but it's probably one of the most common injuries besides, tweaking your hamstring or a sprained ankle that you see in college football. And sadly, literally the only thing that heals it is not putting that foot in a flex position, which means, you can't play. So.
Yeah, UTSA started last season, I think 1-2 also, won Conference USA. They're saying Jeff Traylor, their coach, is saying they're not going to play him unless he's 100%. in anybody's guess. But look, this offense on the whole, with him and without him, and I'm sure the splits are much different, but UTSA getting 5.1 per rushing play. Tennessee's been pretty decent against the run, 4.1 allowed, only 5.7 yards per passing play. That is not good in this day and age of college football. And the Vols only giving up 4.5. So the pass defense has been really good. UTSA turning it over about 2.5% of the time. Can't do that against Tennessee. I look to the other side of the matchup. UTSA has been pretty good against the run, 3.6 a run play. Tennessee averaging 5.7. We mentioned before, Tennessee's got several backs. Tennessee only averaging 6.8 yards per pass play, which I think that number was over 9 a year ago. UTSA giving up 6.2. Here's the problem, though. UTSA has not forced a turnover yet, unless I got my numbers wrong. And you're going to have to do that against Tennessee. Guys, I'm just not I'm not very bullish on UTSA coming in here and pulling an upset. I just don't see reason to.
No, I got Tennessee big. That's all I got. I think Tennessee bounces back big, as history has proven they will. So
Next, Blake.
let's just run through Florida and Charlotte real quick, because I think this is another one that should be in the favor of the SEC team here. I mean, look, I think it's just Florida just came off the biggest win in however long, right? And that was just a significant win for their psyche, everything else. But they're 4 touchdown favorites here against Charlotte. And I just think I'm always curious after a game like that, because we can all just kind of make the statement, right? Like, this is the game that changes the program. And, I would like to see Florida come out and just kind of, all right, all that, no confidence after the Utah game. Now our confidence is back. We know we got talent. We know we can, play with, and we can beat a team like Tennessee the way we did. I know the series history and everything was in their favor, but they won the game. Tennessee didn't lose the game. Florida won the game. And so I think this is a team you should beat. Don't give you any reason to kind of, Florida wins this game by a touchdown or something, and all of a sudden you start to backtrack a little bit. I'd like to see kind of that mentality, which I think they'll have coming into this one. All right, we know we can be a team. Or we're a top 25 team as of right now. And I think this is what you want to see them kind of prove that in a game against a team, like I said, they should beat by multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more, Blake. And, what I want to see is I want to look up at the end of the first quarter or halftime and Tennessee be up by 14, 21, 28. I don't want to look up and see Florida, messing around. It's a 7-point game, 3-point game at the end of the first, at the end of the second. They need to establish themselves as that Tennessee game. I'm not saying it was a fluke, but they need to establish themselves, as you said, as a top 25 program. We talked about that Tennessee game being a must-win for Billy Napier and the Gators. It was an absolute must-win for him as a coach, but also as the psyche, as the team. If they can beat Charlotte this weekend, it'll be Florida's first 3-game win streak in 3 years.
Wow.
And so that just goes to show you what this program's been the past 3. I mean, the Florida Gators, their first 3-game win streak in 3 years. And look, the people in Gainesville love their Florida football, man. There's a home game against Charlotte. They're a 27.5-point favorite. The Swamp is sold out. And so people are on board. That's why it was such a must-win game for Florida last week against Tennessee. And so, like I said, what I need to see is to prove to all those fans that are sitting in every single seat in that stadium that wasn't just a night that we played well. That's the exact team that we're going to be moving forward this year. And if they can establish that and they can get their fans on board for the season and the confidence starts rolling in the locker room, I think they're going to win some games that maybe at the beginning of the year we thought weren't possible.
A couple of notes on this game. You had that big brawl between Tennessee and Florida, or whatever you want to call it, altercation at the end of that one. That resulted in suspensions. By the way, Tennessee had some. I meant to mention that. Gavin also didn't mean to shut you out of the predictions on that one. We'll get you in this one too. So that was unintentional. But Florida suspensions reminded me Tennessee's got some too. But Florida's got Damian George, Michael Mazkua, and tight end Dante Sanders suspended. That's the right side of their offensive line. That's for the first half of the game, not the whole game. So might you see Florida come out a little sluggish? Sure. But between beating a hated rival and the biggest win for Billy Napier, in my opinion. And then, oh, by the way, Florida's got Kentucky next week. So I could see Florida starting slowly in this one for 3 or 4 reasons we could name before they've even teed up the ball.
Maybe. I hope not, because I think if you want to really fully buy into this team, I still think, even with the guys that aren't in there, I think Florida should win this game convincingly.
That's how I feel, Blake. And as a player on the sideline, you can feel it. Obviously, there's momentum behind the program right now, and man, think about the whirlwind of college football. Like 3 weeks ago, we were just talking about this loss to Utah, and we were so disappointed and talking about all this, and now we're talking about confidence and momentum behind Florida. That's the up and down and the roller coaster ride of the college football season, y'all. That's what it is. And if you think it's a ride for you fans, imagine how it is as a player in the locker room with pads on. I mean, it's an absolute, mind game, and you have to stay forward with it. So yeah, they need to come out and establish themselves early. When you can tell when you're out there and you're kind of messing around, and then finally someone at the end of the first quarter, midway through the second, kind of snaps you into place, and then you run away with the game. I don't want to see that. I want to see them come out and throw haymakers right away, and it'd be 14-0, it'd be 21-3, it'd be 28-3 at halftime, whatever it may be. I want to see Florida establish themselves in front of all their fans, obviously, but I also want to see it, as a bystander and a civilian. I want to see Florida dominant. Florida's fun when they're dominant. They really are.
Yeah. A few things on Charlotte, coached by Biff Poggi. I think the only football coach in the FBS named Biff, also a former CEO, interestingly enough. So he's got some business experience, been in coaching for a while though. 3 games for Charlotte so far. The 49ers have, beaten South Carolina State 24-3 the opener, lost to Maryland 38-20 in the next week, and then lost 41-25 to Georgia State. Now, Maryland's a good team. Georgia State's one of those kind of tougher group of 5 teams. You've seen some SEC teams find that out the hard way at times. Won't name names, but anyway. So there's that. But I look inside the matchup. Is there anything here that Charlotte can do that's problematic for Florida? Nothing's really jumping out. Problem for Charlotte's turned it over on offense, 3.3% of snaps. Although Florida's not really forcing any turnovers so far, less than 1% of snaps. And Charlotte giving up 8.5 yards per passing play. You saw Graham Mertz take a little bit of a leap last week, not really great against the run either, 4.6 yards a running play. I think Florida's going to try to just run with Trevor Etienne. And I just don't see anything here on paper that would make you think Charlotte is going to give this a game. The line is 28. FPI has got Florida by 27, SP Plus Florida by 36, Sagarin by 27. So I'll take the Gators big. Maybe they don't cover the number because, again, what they just did, what's coming up, the suspensions to start the game. But I don't have any reservations about Florida taking care of business. Of you, Gavin, since we shut you out of the last one, let's get your final take on this one, and then we'll go to Blake.
Thank you, Chris. No, I think Florida wins big. I do, and as I said multiple times, I hope that they don't come out the gate sleepwalking. Especially, we've seen it with previous teams. Texas gets the big win against Alabama. It's like 10-10 at the end of the third quarter against Wyoming. They need to establish themselves early and win this thing. No, I got the Gators big, and I actually do think they'll cover as well. I think they'll win by about 28 plus.
Gators. On to the next one. Missouri, Memphis.
Hey,
we wrap up with
Blake. Before we go Missouri, Memphis, this is a great time to insert a sponsor.
All right, hold on.
Chomps.
There they are,
guys. Have you had your chomps yet? Guess what I do? I've got all the stuff I got for display is mostly empty packages because we are going through chomps like crazy here at the Lee household. We have tried multiple flavors. I'm having to slow the roll a little bit because I don't want to exhaust the Chomps variety pack just like in a day. But let me tell you, we could do that pretty easily. It is good for you. It is not loaded up with sugar and other additives. So it is your good protein boosting snack without all the bad stuff. Hey, that's great, especially if you got kids with allergens and stuff like that. Chomps has been a really nice new partner for us. Really enjoying their stuff. Hope you will too. I think, Blake, you've got the promo code in the description of the episode, so you can get 15% off Chomps if you at home order this. And we recommend you do. Not only we like it, but it helps us out too.
SC14, promo code, link in the description. Click on that thing, folks. Help us out. And as you continue to see at the bottom of the screen, if you want to advertise, sponsor this show, the entire channel, the morning report, the alien report, anything we got on this channel, you can sponsor all of it by just reaching out to caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. And yes, you can do that. And as always, we need sponsors, guys. We are asking for a reason. If you want us to be able to keep doing this, hey, we're just asking for a little help with some sponsors and advertisers so we can keep doing the daily show, the morning report, everything we do here at Southeastern 14. So we appreciate you. And Chris, we're going to appreciate rolling through this Memphis and Missouri game real quick because there are a lot of
I got a question first. Where did the alien report come from in the recesses of your mind?
Because if anyone wants to sponsor an alien report here on Southeastern 14, we're going to have something that no other SEC football outlet has, and that is all kinds of fun stuff we can do with that. So,
okay.
All right, Missouri-Memphis, we're going to roll through this pretty quickly, guys, because I know a lot of people here waiting on Arkansas LSU. So we're going to get to that here shortly. But Missouri-Memphis, I think Blaine put it best. Whatever day that was on the morning report, he can remind me in the comments, but how does Missouri handle success? That is what this comes down to, because this is one of those games that I've said this before, and probably this week on the show at some point. It's one thing to beat Kansas State. It's another thing to lose to Memphis, because one all of a sudden gets kind of canceled out in terms of the momentum and everything you built last week. If you come out and lose this game, because everyone's already, myself included, I apologize for being in on the hype train here, but the 5-0 start is looking pretty right now, and that's what people think. They beat Memphis, they go beat Vanderbilt, and they got LSU 5-0, biggest game in the history of Missouri football or something. I don't know. I know there were some big ones back in the day when Kansas were ranked 1-2 or whatever it was years ago. But yeah, so it's a very important game. There's no other way to put it for Missouri. Just as the Kansas State game was important, you got that win. Now it's, can you keep this thing going? Memphis, Chris, kind of doing a little scouting on them. Watch the game against Navy. They didn't look great against Navy. And that's a Navy program that's kind of rebuilding a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But they have, beat Bethune 56-14, beat Arkansas 37-3. And so, Hennigan's there, and this is just one of those that you want to see Missouri come out and kind of handle what they did last week. And I'm very curious to see how they play, because this is a game you can lose. That's how we put it sometimes, right? Like this is not one of those teams just come in and sleepwalk and beat by 2 touchdowns. It ain't going to happen. 2007. I appreciate that, Dean, bringing that up. I was talking about the big game for Missouri then, but so sneaky good game here. Curious to see how Missouri handles it.
Yeah, and I think also too, and I've talked a lot about the whirlwind and roller coaster ride of a season. Last week was the biggest game of the season for Missouri. Out of conference, Kansas State at home had a chance to kind of change its trajectory. Okay, well now this game is the biggest game of the season for Missouri versus Memphis. I'm fired up. It's in St. Louis, y'all. I was actually just in St. Louis in June for a Cardinals game. I think the best way to describe St. Louis is kind of it's best days are behind them as a city, but overall they're rabid sports fans, and we've seen the XFL. The XFL has played a couple games and that abandoned Rams place, and they pack it out. And so I think this will be a really fun game for the city as well as both fan bases. But when it comes to the two teams, like I said, now this is the biggest game of the year for Missouri, and you said it, Blake. All the momentum they just had, last week beating Kansas State at home is gone if they find a way to lose this game against Memphis and find their way hobbling into the Vandy game and LSU game. So they need to establish themselves. Do we have an update with Brady Cook's injury? I know he's a little banged up.
Yes. I texted my good buddy Gabe DeArmond, who covers Missouri for PowerMizzou.com. He texted me back right about the time we were starting this show saying he expects Cook to play. I think seems like there's a pretty big drop off from him to Horn, at least in terms of of coaching staff trust.
Yeah.
So watch. I think this. Let's see. Vegas has got 54.5 points on the over-under. That feels a little high. Memphis, I'm going to read you some defensive stats for Memphis before we move on to the next thing.
Sam's comment. St. Louis beats in 19. Oh, my goodness, Sam.
I tried to be nice about it. That's what I meant. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, they did lose an NFL team, so there was that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
never good. We've upset Oreo. Missouri is a 6.5 point favorite, according to the last thing I know on the spread, 54.5 point over under. That makes a final of 31-24 Missouri. That seems a little high. My goodness, he's losing his mind in there. Missouri -6 according to FPI, -5 according to SP Plus, -5 according to Sagarin. So everybody's got it at 5 to 6 point range. Now, Memphis hasn't played much of anybody yet, but the defensive numbers have been elite. 4.8 yards against rushing plays, 3.0 against passing plays. That's unheard of. Memphis forcing turnovers on about 4% of snaps. Missouri's going to have to run the ball and be careful. That seems like the way to attack Memphis. And I think that Missouri will do that and take care of business, but I think it's going to be a low-scoring, close game is my expectation, especially if Cook is not 100%.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm going to pick Missouri just because, again, I want to try to keep my 5-0 bowl prediction alive here. But, yeah, I mean, what Blake Watson had a big game against Navy. You kind of look at the way this Memphis team sets up here, and they know. I mean, all the pressure's on Missouri in this one, coming off that big win against Kansas State. And like you said, Chris, this line is down to 6 in some places, seems to be moving down more. And so, yeah, this is one of those. I think if you're a Missouri fan, and I know we have somebody like you're nervous. I think about this one. I think you have every right to be, because you know how that felt last week, and now you're thinking of what it could feel like if you lose this game this week, and that opportunity that's there. And we've seen some programs try to take that next step in the SEC before, that win one of those big games, and all of a sudden they turn around and lose a game they shouldn't, and then you kind of reset. And I hope that doesn't happen for Missouri, and I'm going to pick them to win. But I just tend to think with Cook's injury and those things coming into play here, this is going to be one that maybe comes down to the wire.
Yeah, I think you're a little nervous as a Missouri fan. I think that's warranted. At the same time, this game's going to come down to is if Missouri can sustain the explosive plays that they were able to create against Kansas State. That's something we haven't seen them be able to do in previous weeks. Luther Burden over the top of a safety, Luther Burden on a screen. There's other guys on the offense as well, but you got to get the ball in Three's hands. The guy's an absolute dynamic player. And so, can they continue to do that? I got Missouri as well. I think they're going to win anywhere between 3 and 6. I think it will be tight. Neutral site game in the middle of the year. You don't see that a lot. Usually it's at the beginning. But I think it'll be a fun atmosphere, fun time in St. Louis. I'm telling you, those fans are rabid football fans. If they show up for an XFL game, I promise you they'll show up for college football.
All right, Blake, where are we steering it next?
By the way, I just want to give a shout out real quick. We got an email during the show or right before the show, someone reaching out to want to sponsor the show, and just to kind of piggyback on what I said a minute ago. We really appreciate you guys for doing that. Some of you guys are really sending in your want to help us with sponsors and advertisers, and that's pretty awesome, Chris. Considering less than 2 years ago we got about 100 subscribers on this channel, and we love that people want to support us and help us keep doing more of these live shows every day. We want to build you guys an entire network of live shows. That's what we want to do. Like, we want to give you live shows from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night. Like, that's really what we want to do. So we appreciate you guys for doing that. And again, we do. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and super chats as well. Always a helpful thing. So, all right, guys, let's talk about Arkansas LSU. Now, we have our Arkansas LSU preview video. You can check out Chris and Blaine's predictions and preview for the matchup there. But we want to kind of go into this one a little bit more here as sort of the spotlight game for the day. Boy, Chris, there's a lot of Arkansas fans unhappy right now. We know that. And a lot of talk about Sam Pittman's future and all of that. But I think, too, this is one of those games where you think about the variety of outcomes potentially. LSU comes out and just blows Arkansas out here, which, as Gavin was talking about before, I mean, we know Rocket Sanders isn't playing. We know that's had an impact on this team so far, but man, if LSU comes out and wins this game by 3 touchdowns or something, I don't know where Arkansas fans stand after that. I think, it's just one of those things where this is a game that I feel like KJ Jefferson is going to have to wheel them to an unbelievable offense performance, because I just look at LSU and man, they are. I think we talk about get right games, right? Mississippi State was a get right game for LSU. They look like the LSU team that we know they can be in that game. I know it's one game. Malik Neighbors had a ridiculous stat line. I get all that, but I still think they're one of the most talented teams out there. And it's a tough spot for an Arkansas team that's reeling off a loss to BYU. And I'm just curious to see how the perception of not just Arkansas, but LSU changes after this game, because I think there's several different ways this thing can go here. So
yeah, I think, we sat here at the beginning of the year and we actually laid out Arkansas's schedule game by game. And I remember when we got to that BYU game, I think we all agreed, it's maybe a tougher out of conference game. That's a game that Arkansas should win. And then we moved on. Okay, well, they lost that game, but now they're tearing down. They got LSU this week. And then who do they play after that? They play A&M after that, Ole Miss after that, and then Alabama after that. So the gauntlet is coming for Arkansas. Can they find a way to win this game, get some momentum back, and then keep rolling? 3 out of their next 4 opponents are top 15 teams. I mean, that's just brutal. And so, what can they do? What can they do here to, whether it is a win, hopefully it is a win for Razorback fans, and can they establish some momentum? Because this is going to be an absolute gauntlet where, we may be standing here at the end of this talking about, that seat getting a little bit hot for Sam Pittman. I hope not, because I like him a lot, and I think he's a really charismatic guy for that program. But, wins and losses speak a lot of volumes in this conference, and I'm afraid that may be the case here with the gauntlet coming up for Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas is going to be away from home 4 games, and one of those will be neutral at Jerry's World. But did you guys listen to Sam Pittman's press conference this week? It sounds like they're feeling it up there. He was talking about social media and all those things like that, and basically talking about needing to stay away from it. I'm paraphrasing, but it sounds like, and he said, "Hey, we're coaches. We get it." And I think it was kind of a let's try to protect our players against this kind of stuff. But I think he's feeling the heat up there a little bit.
I think also, too, let's look at what Sam Pittman's done since he's gotten there. When he arrived, Arkansas was a bad SEC program. They were losing games left and right, getting blown out, losing non-conference games. They had no business losing. He's brought them up a long way since what they've been. But it's also, what I've said, too, about Arkansas is, can they take the next step? Can they take the next step as a program and get, a big signature win against a top 15, top 10 team? I haven't seen that yet. What a golden opportunity this weekend. What a golden opportunity. It's in Death Valley at night. A lot of people don't come out of there alive. We'll see. This is a big opportunity for them for sure.
The comment on Greg Brooks Jr. is something I meant to bring up off the top. Of course, Brooks played at Arkansas. Pittman talked about that at their news conference this week. Had I think some issues. I can't remember fall camp or early. He played the first couple games and then found a brain tumor. I mean, just awful. It's awful for anybody, but especially, speaking of someone who's a parent, your heart breaks when something happens to your kids. And our prayers generally going out to Greg Brooks Jr. I mean that, and I hope people in the audience will say their prayers for him too, and wish him a successful and speedy road to recovery. What a devastating situation that is. So we wish our best to everyone there. But Blaine brings this up, and I'm just going to take his word for it. Sam Pittman has deactivated his Twitter account.
Good. Everyone should deactivate their Twitter account. I mean, great. Good for him. I'd like to stand up and clap right now. Great job, Sam Pittman. If I were a head coach, I get it. I say this half jokingly. It's the era where you have to, talk to recruits and all this, and everybody's got to retweet and like everything that every potential recruit, does. And if he drink a Mountain Dew this morning, I got to like that, tweet and all this to, kind of increase my interest. And I get it, but man, there is no way unless I absolutely had to, and it was a recruiting tool, would I be on Twitter to respond to anything or view anything. And yes, let's just all call it what it is. Lane Kiffin's a different example.
Yes.
He
Oh my
used it the
goodness.
way every coach should use it. Just use it just to completely troll people. That's fine, because that's all it kind of is anyways. But so yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I think, look, too late brings up a point here, and I think this is true. We always look at the setup in these kind of games, yet they always, I feel like, are just, you never know. Like, because it's still the SEC. I mean, Arkansas is still a very talented team. Yes, they're coming off of a very, very disappointing loss, but this is still a very talented team. They still got a quarterback that can make plays, and you always have a chance in that setup. We know the defense is going to try to mix and match some things to make things harder on Jaden Daniels, because if you don't, then you don't got a chance here, because I think of what they can do, and we saw what this offense can do last week. So I don't know. I mean, these games are always hard to predict, but at the same time, yeah. I just think LSU, to me, this is more about what my preseason expectations were for LSU. It was to look like they did last week against Mississippi State and not look like they did in the final, 20 minutes of the Florida State game. I think that's probably more the direction, and that's the more real LSU to me than the one we saw that just completely unraveled at the end of the Florida State game. So, it's hard. If this we saw last year, right, Chris? What was the final score of that game last year in Fayetteville? Low scoring game, right? It was really low scoring. Arkansas fans will jump in and tell me on this, but it's just different when you go to Baton Rouge, as Gavin said. So, this is probably the best way I would have said it. Without Rocket Sanders, I just think the setup, I just think LSU's offense they're just hard to defend, as we've seen. So
well, it is. But as we brought up repeatedly, Arkansas's got other guys that have had success running the ball. Now, nobody's having a lot of success running it this year, but it's got KJ Jefferson, it's got DeBinion, it's got a lot of guys in that backfield who played some ball in this league. Now, offensive line has been the issue, which is not exactly where you want to be playing against that front seven, because LSU's got some dudes up front, boys and girls.
13-10. Yeah.
Okay. So there is that. I don't think it's like completely hopeless, even without Sanders. There's a formula there, but Arkansas just hasn't been able to tap into it. But having said that, guys, I'm looking up some stuff, and I didn't realize this till now. And LSU's had this at times with opponents that can overwhelm. LSU's given up 5.2 per running play. So something's got to give here. Either LSU's run defense is going to have to get better, Arkansas's rushing offense has to get better itself. I mean, and both things are certainly capable of happening, but that's kind of the thing that I'm watching into this one, because if you're Arkansas, you want to keep that LSU offense off the field. Best way to do that is through controlling the possession, just hanging on to the ball. And again, LSU has provided some fertile ground for that at times, but Arkansas just has not been what we thought it would be in that area.
I think that this game really just comes down to can KJ Jefferson be outstanding? If KJ Jefferson's outstanding, I think it gives him a chance to win the game. I do. If he is, I don't want to say, average, because he's not an average player. I think he's a tremendous player. But if he's not outstanding, I just think it's too much LSU at night, Death Valley. And now they're rolling, especially last week. I mean, LSU looked terrific last week. Look, I know Mississippi State may not be what they've been in previous years, but LSU looked terrific last week, and more importantly, Jaden Daniels looked terrific, and that team's going to go as he goes. And so, I think it may be a little much for Arkansas coming in. I got LSU winning this one probably by, I'd say 10 plus, to be honest with you. But I hope it's a really good game, because that one could be a fun little barn burner.
Well, brought up an interesting point there. Arkansas brought in some transfer receivers from not necessarily big schools, and there was a lot of good press with those guys in fall camp. But now you're starting to hear they can't get separation. Yeah, it's harder to run when teams don't trust what you can do to them through the air. So I don't think we can maybe entirely pin this all on Arkansas's offensive line. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I know in the predictions, I assume you picked LSU. It's just hard not to pick LSU in this game. I mean, really, I think yeah, Arkansas, I understand the frustration for the Arkansas fans, which, by the way, Nathan jumping in here, busy day at work, but I know Nathan is fully invested in his hog still. And yeah, I'm very curious to see how this thing unfolds here, because I think this is one of those matchups that Arkansas is very talented. KJ Jefferson is very good, but in this setting, in this matchup, I think the last thing Sam Pittman needs is a game that just completely gets away from them early, and LSU wins this thing just completely going away, which I think is on the table as an option because of how good they are. But we'll see what happens. So maybe the Hogs get back on track here and make this a game, because, as mentioned earlier, these kind of rivalry games you can never fully predict, even if you are leaning one way, which, as pointed out too, LSU now a 17.5-point favorite in this one. Super chat time, Chris.
All right. That's to you, Gavin. Can you read that from your screen? Okay.
Yep. I got you, Dan. Well, first off, Dan, I appreciate you tuning in, and thanks for the donation there, man. I think before I answer this, I want to give my props to a couple stadiums here. The only two I did not play in, which I hate, was Jordan-Hare and Death Valley, Auburn and LSU. I really wish I got a chance to play in those two. As a lot of you guys know, you rotate with Vandy being in the SEC East, you rotate your opponents with the West. Obviously, it's going to look a lot different in the future. So those are the only two stadiums I did not play at. I got to give my props to Texas A&M. We opened the season there in 2020. It was the COVID year, and so I think we got robbed of the full experience at Kyle Field. I think there was only like 65,000 there compared to, being able to pack it out in a normal year. Just a funky year overall. But hardest place to play that I ever went was Florida, the Swamp. It's super unique. It's unbelievably steep. Usually there is some space between your sideline and the start of the stands. It's right up on you. And so, I've joked with Chris a little bit about, they're yelling at you and you can hear them on the sidelines. And next thing you know, they find your Instagram and find your girlfriend and find your mom's name and all that kind of stuff. They're ruthless. I remember there was a 4th and 1. It was early in the game. I believe it was in 2021, maybe at Florida. It was 4th and goal from the 1 early in the game. And we had a chance to tie it. And there was a timeout taken before. And when we took the field, I couldn't even hear anything. And so, man, those Florida fans got it going on. And that's why I've just kept saying, man, Florida is fun when they're good. Florida is fun when they're dominant. It's good and healthy for college football. But Florida in the Swamp gets my flowers, man. I've never been in a game where I haven't been able to hear myself think, except for that one.
Blake, before we wrap up, and I'll let you just sort through the best of the comments and the questions here that we haven't gotten to. I want to thank our other sponsor, MyPerfectFranchise.net. My buddy Andy Ludicky runs that company. What they do, they sit down with you. They try to determine, sort through your aptitudes, your interests, those sort of things. They also look at your family. Do you want more time for yourself, to go to your kids' ball games, all those things that make life worth living? On the other hand, they have this database of franchises they sort through. They try to match you with somebody who is a good fit for what you're looking for out of life and with your skills. They do not try to steer you to a particular place to get a bigger commission. That's not how they do it. They were looking out for you. Again, your end of it is free so that you're not paying anything. So they invest some time in you, and then they try to get you with the right people on the other end. Go check out MyPerfectFranchise.net today. If you're looking for a career change, looking to own a franchise, those are the guys who can help you with it. Wonderful people. Brandon Beachy, former Atlanta Braves pitcher. You may know that name. Works for those guys. You'll probably deal with him. So check out our sponsors at MyPerfectFranchise.net. Okay, Blake, let's wrap it up. What have we got that we didn't get to, or the comments in the chat, wherever you want to go with this today?
Well, I'd like some score picks here from the fine folks in the viewing section in the comments. Give us your picks for the LSU Arkansas game. Give us your score prediction for that game in the comments on the way out here. And tomorrow, I know Trey Wallace will be on, Chris, and you guys will continue to go through all the other action. But I want to see the LSU Arkansas score here from the folks in the audience, so you can check that out. And I think we've kind of hit on the main stuff. Again, guys, you can check out all of our previews that are up for every game on Saturday involving the SEC games, particularly. We went through the non-SEC on SEC ones here on the show. But LSU, Arkansas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn, A&M, Missouri, South Carolina, not Missouri, South Carolina, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and I may have forgot someone, but full previews for all those games up on the channel. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, always helps us out. And again, if you want to advertise with us, reach out, caroline.smith at southeastern14.com.
Parting thoughts, Gavin.
Just super pumped. As I said at the beginning of today's show, man, it's a start of a new page. This conference play starting to get going here, and some big games in Tuscaloosa and Baton Rouge, and I'm just going to be glued to that couch is all I know. I hope everybody watching is doing the same.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back at it on Friday. We live stream every day from 11 Central to noon. We have the replay later in case you missed some of it. Always taking your questions and comments. Trey Wallace will be with us tomorrow. We'll go over the landscape of the SEC, the games this weekend. Trey's been on the beat at Tennessee before. I'm sure we'll dive into the Vols a little bit and their situation. And game days, we usually do some live streams and some stuff like that after games in. Don't always know what that's going to look like because it's dictated by the games. If there's a big upset or a crazy finish, sometimes we may just choose to go live then. But best way to get that and pick up on whatever we're doing, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. For Blake Lovell and Gavin Schoenwald, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. We thank our partners Chomps and myperfectfranchise.net, and we'll see you again Friday from 11 to noon Central.